Ladies and gentlemen, we are in for an absolute treat. Carolyne Opinde is about to come on and absolutely rock your world, telling you about how to boldly request to transform people's lives. Oh my gosh, we're going to dive into it. We're going to be talking about raising funding. We're going to be talking about becoming our GPS with Carolyne. Before that, let's talk about the sponsor message. If you are an entrepreneur, high achiever, you're out to change and transform the world, live your purpose-driven life, then I want to talk to you. I want to hear about what your message is, what your mission is. If we can support you with the 12-hour marathon, great. If there's other ways I can support you with coaching, with helping you get your message out with a podcast, I love doing that with our clients as well. Send me a message, chris@beyourgps.com, or find me on Facebook or some other social media, and let's talk, okay? Next up is going to be the iTunes review of the week. This week, it's by Esperant. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Esperant says, amazing. I appreciate everything that is expressed and conveyed when I listen to Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self with Chris Burns. It helps me to go a step forward toward greater success and a path of enlightenment. Thank you so much, Esperant. If you want to give us a review, which you do. I know you do. I feel it. You want to give us that feedback. You want to support us with that review. Go to beyourgps.com/iTunes or search Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self on the iTunes store and give us that review. Let us know what you love, how we can improve, how we can make the show even more valuable for you. And while you're there, make sure to subscribe so you can get all the latest updates of the 12-hour marathon of Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self and this podcast. Thank you so much in advance, and I look forward to growing with you and hearing your feedback. Again, that's beyourgps.com/iTunes or search Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self on the iTunes store. Let's introduce Miss Carolyne. Before that, though, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, be ready to take notes because this is going to be an epic conversation. This woman is so powerful, so brilliant, and doing amazing things for the world. She's achieved a lot, and you definitely want to stay tuned all the way through till the end so you can get that gold, so you can grow yourself and become your greatest possible self. Let's introduce her, and then we'll bring her on the screen. Carolyne A. Opinde is the founder and senior managing partner at the NGO Whisperer, a global consulting business that helps nonprofits raise funds so they can successfully impact people's lives. That is what we are all about here. Carolyne is a resource mobilization specialist and a certified project management professional with over 15 years experience in the nonprofit sector. Her knowledge and expertise in international development has impacted communities across sub-Saharan Africa, Asia Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean. She has raised over $100 million and managed $20 million worth of projects. Carolyne holds a Master of Science in Project Management from the University of Salford, UK, United Kingdom, and a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Chemistry, wow, from the University of Nairobi, Kenya, among other accredited qualifications. And we are so blessed to have you here with us today. Are you ready to rock the house, Carolyne?
Yes, I am.
Boom! You're now live on Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self. Thank you for
Wonderful.
being here and being you. You're doing amazing things for the world and empowering people all over. So we're going to dive in and have a blast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You're
It's
welcome.
a pleasure to be on this show.
Yes, awesome. So let's dive right into the theme of the day, which I'm sure you have a bit of experience about with, raising funding and really having a heart-based way to empower people to make a difference, and that's master your message. So Carolyne, how does this concept of master your message show up for you in your world?
It shows up every day, Chris. It shows up every day for every funding application that we send out to a donor, whether it is a large multi-million-dollar kind of proposal, or whether we are requesting some high net worth individual or just a small donation from the community to bring change in the neighborhood. You really have to know what your message is. And knowing your message comes from knowing yourself. You cannot have a message that you're taking out there without having faith in who you are, having that confidence that you can do it, and you are the man or the woman at that particular point who is best suited to do that. When you have self-doubt, then whatever comes out of you will bear fruit of self-doubt to the people who are listening to you. But when you're confident and you speak with a lot of confidence, people will want to listen to you. And so becoming the greatest, or embodying the greatness in you, shows up when you know who you are. That's where we start. For nonprofits, it starts with knowing who they are. And how does a nonprofit know who they are? It's the founding vision. The founder of the organization founded the nonprofit for some reason. Some of it is out of conviction, deep down conviction, things they experienced. And sometimes it's just because of what's going on around them. And what I have come to find out when I work with most of the nonprofits that I engage with, whether it's in Africa, in the United States, in Europe, in the Caribbean, is I always go back to the reason why the nonprofit was founded, and I want to understand how has it evolved up to where it is now. And maybe we'll touch on this later, but I want to say it up front. Do not change the vision and the mission of your organization because you're chasing money. I will leave it there and we'll continue.
I love it. This is great. This is so powerful. And it's clear that you know who you are, and you know when you accurately know who the nonprofit is or the organization is, you're able to communicate to them at such a deep level that they'll see the vision. You see their vision, they see your vision, you see how it comes together and how it'll all work. And that's the process of sales, right? Sales is setting a vision, and whether it's selling ourselves to raise funding or selling a purpose or a cause, we're all selling in a way. You know, some people have a negative energy towards the word, and you might call it fundraising, you might call it whatever it is, but I think it's important that we recognize it's the casting of a vision and making sure that that vision, you're aligned with it, as well as the person who you want to benefit from the vision is also aligned with it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So we're going to dive into a little bit more about what your clients come to you for today, Carolyne. What do you stand for?
So the NGO Whisperer helps nonprofits across the globe. Our vision is very clear. We help nonprofits to raise funds so they can successfully impact people's lives. And for you to be able to raise funds successfully, I identified when I came up with the vision of the NGO Whisperer, which was really founded, I started working and doing this as a full-time and stepped out of my job last year, the same month of March. So March is a very important month for me in my life. As you know, I got married a few weeks ago.
Yay,
and
congratulations.
Thank you. And last year, this time, I stepped out of my full-time employment in a certain nonprofit that I continue to engage with. And one of the key things that nonprofits come to me and they say, Carolyne, I would like the NGO Whisperer to help us in raising funds. However, when we start looking at how can we raise funds for these nonprofits, I go deeper than just raising money, because we're not in the business of chasing money. We're in the business of impacting lives of people. So, of course, we need money to do that. However, the nonprofit itself has to have very strong leadership and governance. So I start from asking the people who come to me, whether it's the founder or the nonprofit executive directors, is, what are your founding principles? What do you stand for? Because I want to understand who you are before I start raising funds for you. And remember, when you're raising funds, you need to align yourself with the donors. So then we look at issues around leadership, governance, and leadership within the organization. And if I find any gaps in there, then I advise them on what to do. whether it's in the founding documents in terms of their legal registrations or compliance to certain rules and regulations, because donors will be attracted to nonprofits that are compliant with their own governments and also with international standards. Yeah. So that's governance. Then I also look at ways in which they have a real high performing teams to be able to manage this project. So that comes under project management. Yeah. And we look at their systems and processes. So where there is a gap, again, as a project management specialist, because that's also one of the areas that I have specialized in academically, and I have years of experience in managing large projects. Mm-hmm. So I step in and I help them to strengthen those areas. That is before we start raising funds, because when donors come in, we want to see an organization that is high performing. Then there are other issues that may be in terms of compliance, enterprise risk management. We look at the risks that this organization might be exposing themselves to. So think about a project that's being implemented in an area like right now in Africa, we're experiencing huge problems in Malawi, in Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. In these three countries, most of the regions are really underwater because of Cyclone Ida. And so we look at things like risks that project that is being implemented there might face. And we identify those risks and mitigating factors and outline them for the donor and say, we would like you to fund us just in case there is a risk of this and this and this, then this is what we have plans for. And then we raise money.
Yeah. So you got to know what are, like you said, are the weakest points so that you can address those, so that you can raise the money and have the money be successfully distributed, successfully executed the vision of the nonprofit with those resources. It's like, I think a lot of people think that money will solve all the problems. Well, not really if it doesn't get applied effectively and appropriately, and that's why the project management aspect of what you do has to be a huge benefit to the nonprofit organizations that you work with.
Absolutely. And you have rightly put it. Money can solve problems, but you need systems and processes to support that. And that's where we come in, whether it's in leadership where you deal with people. So we talk about people, systems, processes. When you talk about an efficient system, an effective organization, and an efficient organization, you have the right people, starting from the leadership to the people who are implementing the project in the fields, who I normally call the foot soldiers. You need to have the right people in place. You need to have the right systems. You need to have the right softwares. When you look at systems, we also look at softwares, whether they are human resource softwares, financial management softwares, monitoring and evaluation softwares. What do you have? And if there's a gap, obviously, I recommend I have a wide community of people, and we're building a community right now, and I am launching something in the next few weeks, which will just make it so easy for nonprofits to really grow and explode and impact lives successfully.
Awesome. Amazing. I know we're going to dive into this even more and what you really want our audience to take away from this interview especially. And before we get to that, I want to go back into your journey. How did you get involved in nonprofits in the first place? Where did this burning desire inside of you and really knowing who you are and what you stand for, where did that all come from, Carolyne?
It started a long time ago, Chris. It started when I was about 9 years old, and I was aware of this. But even before that, I could see my parents, my father and my mother. My father passed away, God bless his soul. And my mother, they used to do a lot of social work. My father, being in the medical field, would help so many people who could not afford medical health care in Kenya, where I come from. And my mother did a lot of social work within the community as a businesswoman, as a minister in the Anglican Church, or what you call England. In England, they call them what do they call them here? We call them Anglican Church anyway. And so what I saw her doing was helping the less privileged in the community. And she impacted the lives of so many people in different ways, whether it was supporting someone who could not afford school fees and helping them get scholarship. In some cases, she helped communities and children whose parents were not together, for their fathers to provide for their children so they can have a better life, what in some areas people would call family reunification. I saw her stepping out of her comfort zone to bring in people into our home to stay with us because they did not have a place to stay. And that's where I saw what wealth can be used to bring about change in our communities. And I had this mindset and belief system that was instilled in me as a little child, that when I have money, yes, I provide for myself, but it needs to overflow to those around me and those who are less privileged around me. And so the abundance mentality that I have more than enough and I will have more than enough came in. And when you put abundance mentality and generosity, then you have who I am today, because that's how it all started.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love it. So your parents were the role models of it. They were the ones who showed you the power of what money can do, and being generous and being abundant and like really applying it into people's lives who were less fortunate, who didn't have as good of a circumstance or upbringing or opportunities as you and your family had. You were able to overflow with that and really bring a lot of happiness and joy and growth and prosperity to other people's lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. So beautiful. So that was your upbringing, and then how did you get into the nonprofit world yourself? Like, what you did a couple different areas in schooling. How did you know that you wanted to do nonprofit from before you went into the secondary education, so to speak, in colleges and universities?
So when I started out doing all this work in the community, bringing about change, I remember the first time that I did not call it nonprofit. It was more like community service. And as a Girl Scout back home in Kenya, we had to do a good deed. It's part of being a Girl Scout. Yeah. And part of the good deeds that we did was I quickly rose to a leadership role in some way or another. And I became a troop leader of one of the Girl Scout troops that we had in my school. And I found myself in situations where I could easily identify needs in the community and gather or mobilize people around and raise funds as children and address issues in the community. I remember this one time when I woke up one morning and I decided I was going to clean dishes in people's houses. So I woke up very early on a Saturday morning around 8 o'clock, and I went knocking doors of our neighbors and asking them if anyone had a sink full of dirty dishes from last night. I would clean it. And I was raising money for a project that we had in school. And I raised a lot of money. And by noon, I had done a lot of dishes. And I was like, this is a lot of hard work. I better go home. So I went home. And I remember my father matching what I had raised Kenya shilling for Kenya shilling, because I was in Kenya. Yeah. And I had collected about 50 Kenya shillings. By then, a whole sink full of dirty dishes, I was charging 5 Kenya shillings. I should have charged more, but anyway, I was charging 5 Kenya shillings to clean the dishes, and some people just fill it, and it was so big. Anyway, and we raised money. The reason why I'm going deeper into this is because at the end of the day, it's not so much how much money you have raised, but when you have a group of people who are working with you, something which may seem little will bring about a big difference in the community. Wow. And so when you go out and you're raising money boldly and people are seeing this, they are buying into that vision. So what we did with this money was we took it to school, and in my primary school where I used to go, we had lunches that were offered to kids who could not afford to go back home for lunch, because that's what we do in Kenya, is you go to school, you have lunch, especially in the rural areas, you go back home for lunch. For some kids, that was not possible. And so the school had a school feeding program, and we would get a meal during lunchtime, and we would also get a glass of milk. The milk used to come in a packet. And so what happened is all this money is collected, we gave it back to the school so that more kids who did not afford to have lunch could be, the fee for lunch could be waived and these kids could have lunch. And then that became bigger and bigger. And I remember, and I don't know how this idea came about, but I suggested to my troop members, and I said, how about we identify elderly people in the community who do not have family members living with them, and we can go spend a day with them, clean up their houses, and mow their lawns, and just have a good time with them. And so I identified this woman whom I knew used to go to church with my mother, and we went and visited her. And I had to go and tell her, people are going to come to your house and help you clean out. And she was like, why are you coming here? And we just said, we would like to help you to mow your lawns, and also to just spend time with you. And I did not know this until my mother told me after the fact, was that woman did not have family members. For some reason, she was an only child and she didn't have a child. And so she was really alone. And I didn't know how much of an impact what we did was. And so we spent time with her. And at the end of the day, we made a meal and we ate with her. And I don't think she had eaten with people in many years. She hadn't sat at a table and had dinner with people. And now all these kids, like 20-something kids running around her house. And it was just beautiful. Then after that, we went to another house. And after that, it just became bigger and bigger. And we're doing all these things in the communities, from cleaning the hospitals and going to health centers. And after that, I graduated, went to high school. In high school, I carried the same spirit of community service, specifically because I was in a boarding school. It was not easy to do community work outside of the high school. And so when I joined the university, that's when everything shifted. When I joined the university, I wanted really to be a scientist. Can you believe it? So I studied mathematics and chemistry. And in my fourth year, I was invited for an interview to be a peer education leader for an HIV program that was being launched. It was funded by the Department for International Development, DFID, and now it's called UK Aid. It's simply the UK government funding that's sent out to different countries as foreign aid. And so this was a club at that point. And I was interviewed and I went, and, they asked me how much impact would I have if they had me on board and trained me as a peer educator, specifically focusing on HIV, behavior change communication at the university. And I told them I'm already a student leader. I was the head of accommodation and catering. I had access to the leadership. I had access to the Senate. I had access to all the students, the science students at my college. And so I could make an impact. And so they took me on board. And when I went on board, they appointed me to be, again, a leader of a small group, a group of 10 students. We used to meet twice a week for 3 months, and they trained us. And that's how I got into the HIV and AIDS field. And my love to change lives focusing on global health, but really with a lean towards HIV prevention for the youth in Kenya. So then, after I graduated, that was my fourth year, I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics and chemistry. Then they offered me a job. I was willing to work as a volunteer. And I went for an interview and I thought, oh, I'm just going to volunteer and continue working with them. Because at that time, I was interning at one of the leading research companies in Kenya and now in Eastern Africa. And I wanted to be a researcher. I was looking into diving into statistics and maybe working with, the reserve banks and all that. There were also opportunities of studying chemical engineering and all that. So all those things were on the table. And there comes an opportunity from I Choose Life Africa, because that's what the name is. And they told me that the CEO and the founder, Mr. Mike Mutungi, told me, Caroline, I would like you to come and work for me. I said, oh yeah, I'm already working for you. I will just give my time in the evening because I'm working with this company. It's like, you do not get it. This is a job. You have to resign in the other job. And I was like, are you offering me a job? Will you pay me a salary to do this? And he said, yes. In fact, we have gotten funding, a 3-year award from the UK government. They love what we did with the pilot with you guys, because that was a pilot kind of project. Now we have been commissioned by the Commission for Higher Education to launch this program in all the universities in Kenya. And I would like you to come on board, because in the next 3 months, we are sending you to Daystar University, which was another university, and you're going to work there. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, how do I get paid to do something that I enjoy so much? And then I looked at the salaries. I was like, this looks good. It looks better than the research company where I was interning. Of course, when you're interning, you don't get a lot of pay. So I said yes. And that was the end of the story for me. I am done. I'm in the nonprofit sector. So here I am.
I love it. It's so awesome. Your journey is so powerful. Seeing the benefit that you're able to make for these communities, going from the little girl at school organizing people and mobilizing resources to causes, and then showing up in science and discovering what you can do with AIDS and supporting people with that. And then because you showed up as a leader, because you showed up as someone and making things happen, made it happen, made projects a success. The pilot was a success. So you got noticed and they wanted to bring you on board in a bigger capacity. That is awesome. And I love how your journey is just you're so congruent with your journey and your story, and it, who you are. Going back full circle to the beginning of the conversation, who you are, why you do what you do, and it's super clear and apparent. I love it.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome. So after you got hired there, what would you say were some of the biggest growing opportunities that you experienced over the next couple years of working with nonprofits? Because now you have your own company. I want to hear a little bit more about what did you learn or what wisdom did you gain working for other companies?
So I always wanted to run an enterprise, whether it was supporting other nonprofits or it was just a business. I was always selling something. I always looked for something to sell on the side. At the university, I didn't tell you, I was an athlete. So I used to represent the university in inter-university games, and I would do track and fields, 1,500 meters, 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters. And I used to go to Olympic trials with some of the top Kenyan students. Obviously, I didn't win any of that. Otherwise, you'd have known me as an Olympian. But it was just something that I did for the university, representing them. And so I was always looking for an opportunity to be a greater person, to do more than what I have achieved. I was always looking for opportunities to stretch myself, because I believe deep down inside me, there is a bigger, greater, and more powerful person that I am. So I would stretch myself and stretch the boundaries, obviously legally and in the right way, to see what can I achieve.
Yeah.
So I worked with I Choose Life for almost 5 years, for almost 4 years, 9 months and so. And in 2008, I decided I want to go global. I want to go to another country and do what I am doing in Kenya. Yeah. So I got recruited by this organization called Voluntary Services Overseas. Okay. It's one of the oldest and the largest volunteer organization in the world. Mm-hmm. So I left my paycheck and had to transition into a life of volunteering where I would be given accommodation and healthcare, but not so much money. Basically pocket money like stipend. Yeah. And for 3 years, I did this work in South Africa, Cape Town, and in Johannesburg. And that's where I grew most. While I appreciate all the ground and the support work that I received at I Choose Life, what really stretched me was when I moved to South Africa and I worked with these organizations who are partners of Voluntary Services Overseas. And I traveled and I engaged with so many people at high level, and my mind stretched. And I began to see myself as a global leader. And that's how, for the first time, I was able to address leaders from different countries, because one of the organizations I worked with is actually a global organization. It's a network of religious leaders living with HIV. So I got the privilege of going to the International AIDS Conference and did a presentation there on behalf of the religious leaders who are living with HIV. I was working with them and representing their voices and some research that we had conducted. Then my contract with them comes to an end because you cannot be a volunteer forever with them. So then I got accepted into a position that I applied with another organization in South Africa. And I worked there for 7 years. And I stepped out of that job last year. And I have grown a lot working in all these organizations. I'm eternally grateful for all the people that I have encountered and the lessons that I have learned. The mistakes that I have made me be who I am. The successes I have in my life also, I count it not just as my own successes, but also other people who have contributed to either coaching me, mentoring me, showing me the ropes and telling me, Caroline, you can do it, believing in me, giving me roles and responsibilities that sometimes I felt were too much, and I took them on, and step by step I've grown. And last year an opportunity arose for me to step out of that organization, and I stepped out because I felt I've gotten to a point where I would like to do what I am doing, not just for one organization, but for many. I have the skills, I have the relationships, and I have the desire and the passion to do this. And so I stepped out. And that's when the NGO Whisperer was born.
Beautiful. I love this. And I just really want to dive into that because I hear that what happened over those years of experience. And it's really important for people listening or watching, because sometimes we take that experience and the time, just the time doing the dang thing for long enough, like you get the experience, you get the wisdom, you build the relationships. A lot of people want things instantly. They want to go be multimillionaires instantly. They want to have the empire instantly. They want to, have the freedom instantly. And it's possible. And more than likely, it's going to take work. It's going to take investing for a period of time, and investing in those skills, investing in those relationships, investing so that you can be on your own and stand alone with the accolades, with the experience, and knowing the industry well enough to be able to succeed and prosper in it. So I love how, you put in the work, Caroline, and because you put in the work and you built those relationships and you kept showing up, that's why you're succeeding. That's why this company, the NGO Whisperer, is thriving, because you're able to tap into that power and that potential, especially the self-image, your self-image expanded, who you knew yourself as, the confidence, the boldness, the empowerment that you can fuel yourself with. At the beginning of a career, it may be a little bit more difficult to be so confident and bold and like have it all together, so to speak. But over time, you get those lessons. You have mentors and teachers who really help you and shape you and guide you along the way. And now you're teaching people how to raise funds. And that's really what we wanted to focus on today is that conversation of how to raise funds and impact lives globally. So I love that you're just showing up and totally aligned.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So let's dive into that a little bit more. What do we need to know about your mission, the company, raising funds, and being able to impact more lives? Where would you like to start with that?
So for organizations who are looking to raising funds, it is important, like I said before, to know who they are, but at the same time to look at the relationships that they already have. Last year, I had the privilege of speaking with the leaders in one of the largest movement organizations, YWCA. And as we were discussing about an opportunity I was pursuing with them, we were looking into a number of things. And one thing that came out so strongly is, as an organization which is known as the largest movement of women across the globe in over 100 countries in the world, the organization felt that they need to strongly stand and proclaim who they are to donors, especially when it comes to issues of raising funds. So that was a lesson learned for me when I was thinking about how do I ensure that when organizations are coming to me and saying, Caroline, we would like to raise funds, that I should not at any point, because of a call for proposals or an opportunity for funding, convince them to change who they are so they can fit within a certain parameter that the donor is setting up for them to receive funding. It's very important. I could easily do that in some cases because some organizations are so desperate. However, I uphold excellence, integrity, honesty, first and foremost to who I am and to what I stand for and to the people I serve who are the nonprofits and to the people the nonprofits serve, which is the communities around them. So when you think about it, it's very tempting when someone comes to you and tells you, you are working in the area of education, but there is money in health. You can just hire new people and change your vision, and for the next 5 years, do a project that's focusing on health because health seems to be the cash cow, and come back to education or what you're doing in the education field. And I've seen so many organizations losing themselves. And this is also a lesson that I learn as I go along, even as an entrepreneur, because I am not a nonprofit myself. I am a consultant working with nonprofits. So the NGO Whisperer as an organization is really a consulting business that works with nonprofits. And I have specific kinds of organizations that I would like to work with. Number one, integrity. Integrity has to come first in anything that we do, because I do not want to be associated with any organization that does not have integrity. And integrity is not just in the way you manage funds, it's also in the way you value the people who are working within the organization. How do the people who work in the organization feel? Are they there for a salary and are tolerating the culture, or are they there because they enjoy working there with or without the salary? Of course, there's going to be a pay, but if you were to tell them there's going to be a decrease or funding is delayed and this month we have to wait a little bit longer to get the salaries, would they still stay or will they pack their bags and go? So that's a critical component, really, of an organization. Integrity, how they treat themselves, how they treat people, how the leadership are they true to their vision? That's number one. The second thing that I look at in organizations is obviously looking at systems and processes. As I mentioned before, when you have $1 million and you're impacting lives, if you do not have systems and processes, that $1 million will go into waste. Either you will underperform and not spend it all, or you will overspend it because you're trying to solve problems and put out fires that you did not sort out before you got the funding. So we look at systems and processes. I have a number of referrals that I could give them in terms of financial systems, human resource systems, monitoring and evaluation, because those are not my area of specialty. So then I refer my clients to certain integrable people within the nonprofit sector who can help them. And the community that I'm building, I'm going to draw on these many people to come in so that my clients and the nonprofits who come to me for help can easily access this type of subject matter experts. Then once we have sorted their systems and processes, obviously looking at all the others is looking at compliance and how do they comply to rules and regulations. Donors or funders are very, very stringent. They have restrictions. They want nonprofits to observe those restrictions to the letter. So if you are not compliant, the chances are you might get funding for the first time, but when the funders come in to do audits of your systems, of your programs, of your financial books, of your human resource, your management system, the staffing and the key personnel that you have within the organization, they might not fund you. And remember, the world is a small village. People talk, and your reputation will be ruined. So what I tell my executives within the nonprofit sector is, remember, if there is something that needs to be sorted out in the process of raising funds, you better raise it up. If it's something that you cannot solve before we put out the application or submit the application to the funder, you better raise it up as something that you are working on with this donor. Let them know. It's the same thing with clients. As entrepreneurs, you're serving a client, and if there's an issue, just let them know, guys, I'm helping you, I'm selling you shoes and all these, but our store is undergoing some renovation. So next week, over the weekend, we will be closing our stores because we are renovating it. You let people know what issues are going on, of course, in a very within certain boundaries, because you don't want to also air your issues to the public. However, if you're looking for funding from a donor, they want to know what's going on, and let them know if there's anything that will jeopardize your ability to implement the program. Be open.
Yeah, it's like setting clear expectations.
Exactly.
If there's something that is a concern, it's interesting though, because there's it's like the I don't know if it's a fine line or a blurry line between like wanting to do our best and having high hopes and optimism, and then the aspect of here are some real concerns that might get in the way. It's like it's could be a challenge sometimes for people to judge, is this something I tell them because it could impact their performance, or is it something that is internal that we're working on, that we know about and we're addressing, and it doesn't necessarily need to be shared because there's discretion, right? There's discretion in what we tell the people who could be funding us or paying us money, and what do they need to know that might impact the performance, and what do we just get to really work on and improve for them.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of what you can share and
Yeah.
what you cannot share.
Okay.
So, an example of what an organization can share is when you're seeking for funding and the funder, especially when you're looking at large donors such as, governments, or multilateral donors, or bilateral donors as we call them, or very large foundations who give you multi-million dollar to implement a 3 or a 5 year program,
Mm-hmm.
is if they have specifically given you instructions and said they would like the head or chief of party of this program to be a medical doctor with a PhD in maternal and newborn child health care, or a pediatric field, or if they want someone to have a PhD in environmental science,
Mm-hmm.
and you're finding it difficult to hire someone with those credentials, they might give you funding and say, within the first, 3 months, we would like you to hire that person. The most honest and integrable thing to do in that position is to let them know that you are in the process of recruiting and update them every month.
Yeah.
Because you always have a program manager who you're connected with and who is your point of contact in the organization. So updating them doesn't mean that you're airing your dirty laundry to everyone. Remember, the donors want to fund you and they want you to be successful, and that's why they put out those restrictions. Yeah. So that's an example of something you can talk about. There are other issues that you cannot talk about when you are raising funds. For example, if you have a team of leadership who are not seeing eye to eye and often end up in heated arguments in the office, those are things that you do not need to let the donor know upfront, but you need to ensure that in all those issues that are going on, because there's always conflict, that at the end of the day, that people agree to work and be objective in what they do. So some of those, that sounds like a very petty issue, but it happens in boardrooms that people get into very heated arguments and might not even end up making sound decisions, or might delay decision making when it comes to very important issues that are being put on the table. Yeah. So some of those things you do not need to share with the donor. Those are, I would call them domestic issues, like within the organization, in-house issues that the senior management team needs to deal with. But other issues that, that are technical, those ones need to be dealt with. Another thing that an organization needs to be upfront about is if there's any case of fraud. Fraud is a serious issue within the nonprofit sector. And I did a research and I worked with a number of donors, most of whom were from the UK, United Kingdom, high top donors. And one of the issues that they raise as a risk for any nonprofit, regardless of how great your systems are, is fraud. Because fraud can be committed by someone who might just decide, you know what, I am going to steal something. And it doesn't have to be money. Sometimes it's the time, sometimes it's commodities within the organization, things like cell phones, laptops, cameras and all that. And all that, is classified under fraud. And so when you identify such an issue, it needs to be dealt with swiftly. And
it's important. It's important to have a stand against that. Like we've been talking about integrity as such an important part of our values, honesty. That's for both of us. Becoming your greatest possible self. That's like, be real, be transparent, and be upfront about everything. Don't be backhanded. Don't be underhanded. Whatever it might be. That's like you might be able to get away with it for a little bit, but in the long run, it's going to bite you in the butt. And I love what you said about the world is a small village. village and that word gets around quickly, like ruining your reputation, like the guilty conscience. It's not worth it, you know. And that's why we really have these incredibly high standards here, and the people who we bring on to the show and the type of people that we talk with, it's incredible. So I really love that stand that you take about being honest and being in integrity.
Absolutely. And that is just reminded me of a story. Yesterday, I was watching a video of one of my coaches who was in South Africa and has now moved to New Zealand. He is in the property business in New Zealand. And he was talking about how, you know, they were demolishing a huge house and it was demolished in a few minutes, you know, like the big cranes and everything just came and pulled the entire house down. And he was talking about it and he said, how interesting. It was just like a food for thought. How interesting is this, that it took probably many years, or I don't know how long it took to build that house, but let's say it took a few months, let's say 9 months to build that house from the ground up to where it was. And then one day the demolition company comes and in 30 minutes, everything was done. And I began thinking about nonprofits and how I can apply that message to what I do every day. Building a reputation takes very long for people to trust you, but it can take 5 seconds of you saying something that is not aligned to the listeners, or an action that is incongruent to the values of the people you serve in your organization, and ruin your reputation for a very long time. And building reputation after you have ruined it can be very challenging. In some cases, you might never win those people's trust again. And so when I speak with my nonprofits through my executive coaching sessions that I have, is to ensure everyone who works with them upholds integrity. It's important, especially in countries where people live in poverty. There can be a great temptation among people who live in poverty to want to amass wealth in a very illegal way. And that is fraud. No matter how people may call it, it is pure and simple fraud, and it is stealing. And so when I work with my nonprofits, executives, you know, I'm very strict on that, upholding integrity, upholding excellence in what they do, regardless of where you are. You could be in the most rural area and you're serving people. No one is watching what you're doing as you serve those people. Treat those people well.
Yeah, I love this. I love this, Carolyne. This is so gold, and so like it's real conversation, and how we get to show up with integrity, with being aligned, knowing who we are, knowing who the people who we're working with it's so important. So if there was a final piece of wisdom that you really wanted to give our audience about being able to make that global impact, raising funds, being bold, tell us a little bit more about what that final takeaway is.
Everyone and anyone can raise funds and make an impact in their community. You do not need to be a high net worth individual. You do not need to be the most rich or the richest government or the richest person in the community. Each and every one of us can raise funds in a small way, donate to a cause within their communities, make a difference by volunteering your time. You can make a difference by contributing to the homeless organization in your city. You can make a difference by giving away some of the clothing that you do not wear during winter periods so that someone can be warm. You can contribute by giving, $2 per month, $3, $5, $10, depending on how deep your pocket is. You can contribute and make a difference. Because you know what? In this life, we have one shot in this life. And you get to 70, you get to 80. I'm not yet there yet. But then I have interviewed and spoken to so many people. And all they do and say is, they wished they had impacted lives of many people, whether it was their families, whether it was their children, whether it was the people they worked with. It all boils down to people are important. And once we value people in our lives, whether you are an entrepreneur, you're a doctor, an engineer, aeronautic engineer, whatever, a pilot, let's make a difference in people's lives. And we all do not have to work in the nonprofit sector. What you can do is make a difference where you are, because the people you work with, even in those offices, someone needs a smile. Someone needs you to be kind to them. Someone needs you to be more polite to them, and you can impact their lives that way. Secondly, is giving. The generous spirit. I am a student of the Bible and I read it, and there is a scripture that says the generous heart is made fat, meaning the generous heart is added more or gets more. Yeah. Or the other scripture that also says that the more you give, the more you receive. Yeah. And at the same time, there was a research that was conducted, and I did a post about it, is giving has a way of bringing a sense of fulfillment in anyone's life, because at the end of the day, human beings are built to be connected to each other. So take time, look around and see who can you be generous to. It doesn't have to be giving a lot, but you can give sacrificially. You can give that which you can sacrifice, one day a week, a mug of coffee, a cup of coffee, and say, this, I don't know how much it costs to buy coffee in the United States, maybe $10, coffee and a donut. You can decide and say, this $10, instead of having coffee today, I'm going to give it to a cause of my choice, something that's close to my heart. Another thing that I would like to emphasize for nonprofit leaders who are watching is you cannot do it alone. What I have done this year is, together with my clients, is build consortia so more and more nonprofits can combine efforts. So instead of working in a silo, work together and apply for funding together, because sometimes the funding is really dwindling and there isn't much funding for every nonprofit. However, when you combine efforts and form collaborations, you are much stronger. And that brings me to the topic of, why am I building a community for the nonprofits? It's for the very reason that I would like more nonprofits to be more effective, because together we are better.
I love it. So how can they join you on this journey? How can they take advantage of your offers and what you are putting together, Carolyne?
You can go to ngowhisperer.com and you'll find information on how to get in touch with me. Alternatively, go to my Facebook page and direct message me. You can also go to the NGO Whisperer Facebook page on Instagram. Reach out to me. I'm also on LinkedIn, Carolyne Opinde, and reach out to me. And lastly, I would like to encourage you to go to our website and NGO Whisperer /magazine 2019, sign up, because that is a platform that we are creating for nonprofit executives, philanthropists, funders, and government officials to connect. And we are creating meaningful connections so people can successfully impact people's lives.
I love it. Carolyne, you are amazing. If you're listening right now, you found value in this conversation. I know I did. Go to ngowhisperer.com, Facebook, the NGO Whisperer. She's on social media, on Instagram, all over the place. Carolyne, you're doing so many amazing things. Your heart is so big, and I really appreciate you impacting these communities and making the world a better place. You're doing awesome. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It is an honor. It is a privilege. And we are truly, truly blessed to be part of this. And I wish you the very best. I look forward to coming back and sharing more about how our community is growing. So next year, maybe this time, I would love to be back and share how far we have grown.
We're doing it. We're doing it, Carolyne.
Definitely.
I'm gonna hold you to it. And I'm so excited to hear about all the growth.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank
Awesome.
you so much.
You're welcome. Have the best day ever. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.